Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller, and I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here. The other night, I got bit by a dog. It was late at night. I was helping someone out trying to get a cone on their dog's head after they had some surgery, and the dog didn't take it all too well. Now, it wasn't something dramatic like a movie. It wasn't an attack out on the street. It was just me helping someone with a dog who's typically good-natured. But I got bit on the hand. It was pretty painful, and I definitely didn't really see it coming, so it was also a surprise. And it wasn't this big, like I said, dramatic movie scene moment, but it was something that kind of turned into something more, but not in the dog bite sense. So the bite wasn't the lesson. What came after was I stood up from trying to help the dog, and I went into the kitchen, and I washed my hands, and I grabbed a paper towel and dried it off, and I looked, and I said, it's not that bad. I've had worse, I've been a firefighter for 27 years. I've been an EMT for 25. There's lots of things in my life that I've shaken off and said, this will be fine. When I was a kid, that was always, rub some dirt on it. My dad was a big fan of wrapping stuff up in his old handkerchief that was in his pocket. It was clean, but, handkerchief and some tape, or just wrap it up and hold some pressure on it. You'll be okay. Duct tape was a good Band-Aid, with a piece of cloth or a piece of handkerchief. So lots of things in the world of field medicine over the course of my life have taken place. So that's kind of what I thought. I said, I'll wash it out. I'll throw a bandage on it. I'll be fine. And I did know, though, I started to think, dog bites come with a high infection risk. Again, that pesky medical knowledge I have and kind of crept in the back of my head. And I know that they recommend a tetanus shot if you get an animal bite. And so I said, I have all this knowledge, but I don't want to take any action. And that's kind of the tension that built, because I said, I really should go to the hospital, but I don't really need to. I want to get home, see the kids before they go to bed. I'll be fine, right? Sometimes we know exactly what to do, and we still choose not to do it. And this was the moment I was struggling with, that I was stuck in. I knew that I should go get it checked out, but I'm thinking, do I really need to? Do I have to take the time? Do I have to go that way? Do I have to go to the ER, sit down and wait to see someone, go through all this rigmarole, when I could probably just go home and bandage it up and make sure I watch it closely and keep it clean so it doesn't get infected, and I would be fine. But then, as I was standing there kind of drying my hand off, I had this thought. If I was on a call, if I went to a fire call or a medical call for someone who was bitten by an animal, or bitten by a dog in this case, what would I tell someone else? If I went to a call, what would I recommend before I left? If I were talking to someone who was bit by a dog, would I just tell them, hey, go home and wash your hands and throw a Band-Aid on it, you'll be fine? Or would I tell them, you definitely need to go to the ER to get checked out because, this is serious, even though it doesn't seem like a serious bite, your hand's not hanging off? Would I tell them to go to the ER? And the answer is definitely yes. And so if you were responding to your own situation, what would you tell yourself to do, is kind of this thing that popped into my brain. And so it really got me thinking about what I should do in the moment based on what I would tell someone else to do in that same moment. And I think sometimes there's so much clarity that shows up when we step outside of our own situation, when we step into the role of looking at it from the outside perspective and saying, okay, if I was looking in and I was looking at someone else who was in my exact situation, what would I do? And that clarity is really important, and I will encourage you to, the next time you're in a situation where you're trying to decide, should I do this or should I do that? Try to just step outside yourself for a minute and say, what would I tell someone else to do? Because I have learned over the years that sometimes we give better advice than we follow. And that sounds a little tongue-in-cheek, and it sounds a little crass to say, but I think it's very true. I think it's true on a lot of levels. Now, not always. Sometimes we can make very good decisions for ourselves, and sometimes we know exactly what we need, and that's good. But I think there's this care gap that exists when the gap is how we care for others versus how we care for ourselves. And I think it just shows up kind of naturally because we know we've been taking care of ourselves for our entire lives thus far, and we know what we can stand, right? And I think it's not necessarily what we should do for ourselves that pops into our brain. I think a lot of times what pops into our brain is, well, how much can I stand? How much pain can I tolerate? How much of this situation should I not go through with, or how much of this can I ignore because I think I can just get on with it and get over it? But this reoccurring theme kind of shows up a lot of areas, and not just with, injuries or animal bites or dog bites or EMS calls, but we tell others to rest, but we tell ourselves, you better push through this exhaustion. You have so much to do. We tell others to go get checked out. Go to the hospital. Go get that dog bite checked out. This is serious. You don't want to get an infection. And then we tell ourselves, we'll wait it out. If something changes, if something gets worse, then I'll go to the hospital. It's that dramatic or, that dreaded if-then relationship, right? If something goes wrong, then I'll go get it checked out, but oftentimes it's too late and the problem already occurred, and we could have prevented the problem in the first place. We tell others it matters. We tell others, your rest matters, your sleep matters, your happiness matters, and then we tell ourselves, we'll be okay. We minimize our own needs, I think, a lot of times. And again, not just with medical things, but when it comes to the care for ourselves in general, about our own emotional and physical well-being. And I think even if you are not someone in the emergency services, I think a lot of times we are first responders for everyone else and kind of last responders for ourselves. If you've ever been in a situation where a friend calls on you and says, hey, I need your help, and you've shown up for that friend, you've talked to them on the phone, or you've driven to their house to help them, or you've picked them up and given them a ride home because their car broke down, or they were at a party they didn't want to be at, and they were getting a little sketched out, and they needed a ride home. All those things, we've shown up for all those people. And I think sometimes we show up last for ourselves because we are always kind of saying, well, we know what we can tolerate and we know what we can stand, so we can keep pushing and keep going. We're not quite at the threshold yet. And that's really dangerous to do. And I don't know why we do it. I don't know. And I'm sure everyone doesn't do it, or maybe everyone does it to some extent. And sometimes we are better at it than others or worse at it than others. But I think sometimes our pride gets in the way, or our stubbornness. We think, well, I've been through something like this before and I was fine and it worked out okay. So I'll be okay. I don't need to do that. Sometimes I think we minimize our own pain. I said, I'm good. I don't like taking painkillers, so I'll be okay. And my mom was like, but does your hand hurt? And I'm like, yeah, but it's okay. And she, so, talking to those people in our lives who care for us, who are like, hey, take care of yourself. Like, don't be silly. Take the pain medicine. They remind us of the level of care that we should be giving ourselves when a lot of times I think we overlook it. And also, I think some people sometimes, and I know I've thought this too, we don't want to be a burden, or we say, well, I'll deal with it later, and that becomes an entire mindset. The I'll deal with it later doesn't just become something in the moment. It becomes a mindset where it shows up over and over again, and then it piles up and turns into something much bigger. And I think sometimes this is especially true in my own life because I have always been the helper and the fixer and the provider. I have this big old servant's heart that just always wants to serve people. So sometimes when it comes to things with myself, I don't even give myself a second thought. I kind of just say, it'll be okay. I have other things to do, right? Famous last words. But the truth of it is, I think that the strength doesn't come from ignoring the problem. I think it comes from addressing it early. There's a lot of people who, the tough guy mantra has always been instilled in them. You'll be fine, suck it up, wipe it off. And look, to some degree, I think we all have to be tough humans. I think to some extent we all need to instill a little bit of toughness in our kids and in our friends. We need to be resilient because we live in a world that's always going to test us, not just with dog bites, but with emotional hardships, with financial hardships, with difficult friendships, with relationships that start and end, with death, with pride, with consequences for our actions. So we have to toughen up a little bit. But when it comes to truly taking care of yourself, when something is actually wrong or there is a need you actually have, we need to make sure we remember that it's not about weakness, it's about alignment with taking care of ourselves the way we deserve to be taken care of. Because being tough and taking care of ourselves are different things. You can still be tough and still know how to take care of yourselves. 1,000%. You can still know what it is that you need to feel okay and feel emotionally well and happy and satisfied, while at the same time being a pretty resilient person who can take care of a lot of things and help other people and battle through tough situations. You can do both. But it's really important to remember not to ignore the things you actually need to be taking care of yourself. And that's kind of where this shift showed up for me. Was I asked myself, well, what would I recommend to someone else in my situation? And then I had to actually follow that advice, because I said, well, I would definitely tell someone hospital, ER, antibiotics, get it cleaned out good, get it looked at, make sure it doesn't need stitches, and they're probably going to recommend a tetanus shot if you haven't had one lately. So I had to take my own advice. So I did. I went to the ER like a good person and a good patient. I took my own advice. But, I think sometimes one of the reasons it's difficult to do that for ourselves is because we have been driven into this constant to-do list mentality. Go, 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 go. We always have to keep going. And sometimes the first thing that pops into our head is, well, I'll be fine. I can take care of it later. It's not that serious. And then we take that and we think, okay, easy, I solved the problem. I don't have to deal with my injury anymore, or my heartache anymore, or my emotional stress anymore. I can just put that on the back burner, and now I can keep moving through the to-do list. And that's great until whatever it is that's bothering you, or the actual physical injury, catches up with you and gets a lot worse because we ignored it for so long. So if this happens, if you need to ask yourself this question, what would I recommend to someone else in my situation? Take a second to pause, step outside yourself, answer the question really honestly, and then act accordingly. That's all. Ask yourself, if someone else was in this situation, if my best friend, if someone I love was in this situation, what would I tell them to do, and what would I encourage them to do? How would I encourage them to seek help? And then do that for yourself as well. Because I have a whole episode about perspective, and this is kind of that, so you need to pause and find a new perspective, and then kind of practice that, right? Three P words. They all came tumbling down, right? Pause it, perspective it, and practice it. And it won't be perfect, but it will at least give you a framework of a way to view the situation where you can actually find yourself giving yourself the advice that you actually need, instead of just always giving it to someone else and ignoring it for yourself. And the bigger picture here is, so beyond the dog bite, this had a big impact, my overall physical health, my mental health, and if I ignored it, maybe my hand would have been fine, but maybe it wouldn't. And then if it wasn't, I need my hands. Any of you guys who know me or follow me on social media, I am busy with farm chores. I mean, I work on a computer for my actual quote-unquote day job, but between emails and doing things at the farm and farm chores and hanging out with my kids and all those things, I need my hands. So my physical health was definitely at stake if I had ignored it. My mental health would have been at stake, because if it got worse and then I couldn't do all those things, I would be going stir crazy thinking, oh my God, if I had just gone to the ER in the first place, I could have avoided this and I wouldn't be in the situation. I wouldn't be angry. And that resentment that creeps in, because I would have said, if only. How many times have we asked ourselves that, right? If I only did this, if only I had done this, then this wouldn't have happened. And hindsight is 20/20. That's one of those cliche phrases. But the reason it's a cliche phrase is because it's true. Once something has happened, we can really see clearly what we should have done in the moment. So try to give yourself that 20/20 foresight to say, as I'm in this situation, what should I do to make sure I don't have that giant ball of resentment or anger on the back end, because something might go wrong. Now, I'm not saying it always will, but sometimes it will, and that needs careful consideration when you're thinking about your future. And this also ties into burnout and to stress and emotional wounds, as I've talked about in other episodes. If you ignore burnout for long enough, if you ignore all those things that are making you feel so depleted and so worn out and so broken and so just empty, they're not going to get better all on their own. You have to give yourself the advice you would give someone else, and then go ahead and work towards a way to fix that. You need to take some positive steps to get to a place where you can actually work on that and make it better. Stress is the same way. Emotional wounds are the same way. You can't just say, I experienced this giant heartache with this huge emotional thing that happened, and I'm just going to ignore it and hope it goes away. Pro tip and spoiler alert, it's not going to go away. It's going to get bigger and fester and get worse. So deal with it when you can deal with it, and take your own advice, or take the advice you would give to someone else. If someone came to you and said, hey man, or hey, bestie, or, hey, whoever it is, someone you love, someone you're close with, someone you're best friends with, if they said, gosh, I'm so stressed and I'm so worn out and I have this huge hole in my heart from this really awful emotional thing that happened, what should I do? I don't think there's anyone out there whose advice to their best friend or loved one would be, oh, you know what? Just ignore it. You'll be fine. I don't think anybody would say, you don't have to talk about it. Just go ahead and ignore it. Move on to something else. Get yourself some tickets. Go see a concert. Go see a show. Take yourself out to dinner. Let's go ride around and get ice cream. Like, it'll go away. It'll be fine. That's not what we would tell the people we love and the people we're close with. I don't even know if you'd tell like an acquaintance that wasn't someone close to you that was a good idea. If someone, you were in the grocery store line and someone that you didn't know was talking about, oh my God, I'm so stressed. Like, I just have all these things to do. I don't think any of us would turn our backs and be like, yeah, that sounds great. Just ignore it. You'll be fine. Have a great day. Because the truth is they wouldn't be fine and we wouldn't be fine either. And, the things that we ignore, they don't disappear. They compound and they get bigger and bigger. And when we ignore them, they can grow quietly without us bothering them and they can get a whole lot bigger. There's a great children's book. I think it's called The Worry Monster. And it's about this furry, fuzzy little monster ball thing that, grows with this little girl as she starts to worry about things. And it physically gets bigger the more she worries about stuff and the more she doesn't deal with things. But it's true. The more we ignore it, the more it's going to compound and grow. Because they're definitely not going to disappear and go away on their own. And when it comes to neglect, I think we as people sometimes neglect our own needs for lots of things. I've got to get the kids here. I've got to get the kids there. I've got to make dinner, do the laundry, do the dishes. I've got to do this. I've got to go to work. I've got 4 meetings. I have to teach. I have to go to my second job. I have to take care of this. My kids have sports games. There's a whole host of lists that we people, whether you are a parent or not, go through. And we check things off the mental to-do list. But small neglect becomes big consequences. If there's something you neglect in a little way and in a small way, it's going to end up being a bigger problem later down the road if you don't address it and don't take the time to work through it and fix it and figure out how to deal with it. Give yourself permission to take care of yourself. I know that might sound kind of silly, but give yourself permission to do what is right for you and to take the time out of your busy life to find the things you need to do and want to do and can work on to make yourself feel better. Don't just constantly live in this place of always feeling overwhelmed, like you always have one more thing to do, so your own personal well-being is going to fall by the wayside. We all have responsibilities. I know we do. Whether you are a parent or not, whether you are a spouse or not, or have a significant other or not, it doesn't matter your age, your socioeconomic status, what's going on in your life. What matters is we all have responsibilities. I know that. And I know we can't just ignore them and neglect them. But what we can do is make sure we find a way to take care of ourselves so that we feel good and balanced and able and capable to tackle all of those said responsibilities. Because you don't need permission to take care of yourself. You should always grant that to yourself. But sometimes I don't think we do. But you definitely need to make the decision to take care of yourself sometimes. And that decision is tough. And it doesn't always show up readily and easily and conveniently. Sometimes we have to push some other stuff aside and say, hey, I have to take care of myself right now because I've got all this going. Yes, I have all this stuff going on, but I'm going to make time. I learned a lot about the phrase make time. There's a difference between having time and making time. Sometimes you have to make time, and it's really, really important to do that for yourself. And this helper mindset that I have from being, I've been in the fire service, like I said, for almost 30 years, which is a crazy thought to me. But when people that I've met that also have this kind of servant's heart and this helping mindset, we are always there to tell people how they can best take care of themselves or how they can best handle the situation. So I think we as people in general, even people who are not in the fire service or are not first responders or anything, EMS, police, hospital workers, everybody in our hearts, we know how to give good advice to people who are hurting and who need to be cared for. I think it's just part of being human and part of having a heart and a soul. I really, truly believe that. Some people, I think, access it a little more easily, and some people are a little more open about it. But I think all of us know what it takes to help people feel taken care of. And I want to encourage you to make sure you are doing that for yourself as well. You deserve the same level of care that you so freely give to other people. You do. You deserve that same outpouring of support that you give to other people when it's a difficult situation or a crisis, you deserve that for yourself as well. So as we wrap up, I want to kind of bring this full circle, and I did go to the ER, right? So I followed my own advice. I took my own advice. And so it was kind of a long wait too. So I was there for more than an hour, and I was like, oh, it doesn't look busy. There's not many people here. There's nobody in the waiting room except for one person. And they were literally taking her as I walked in. I'm like, this should be good. And then I sat there and waited and waited and waited. And the doctor was like, I'm so sorry for the wait. Like, you're next. Like, it's gotten kind of busy. And I was, yeah, it's okay. No problem. I didn't have anything else to do on a Friday night except sit in the ER. No, I'm just kidding. Say that tongue in cheek. He was a great doctor. So I did go get it checked out. And it really reinforced the lesson when I was talking to the doctor, and I'm like, part of me really just wanted to go home and wash it good and clean it out. And he's like, yeah, that, sometimes that happens with people. And I said, what's your recommendation? And he said, well, it doesn't need stitches. You were right about that. He goes, but I am going to give you a tetanus shot. He said, and I am going to have the nurse gave me a bin of water and this disinfectant solution to soak my hand in while I was waiting for the doctor. And so he said, I'm going to give you a tetanus shot, and we're going to clean it out good. I'm going to put you on an antibiotic. And he said, I'm also going to take an x-ray. And I'm like, why an x-ray? He's like, well, he's like, was it the dog full grown? I'm like, well, yeah, he's 2. He's a big dog. So he said, well, he could have cracked one of your bones. He could have chipped off one of your bones. He could have, part of his tooth could have broken off in your hand. And all these things, I was like, I never even thought of a hand x-ray. Like, it hurt a lot and it was sore, but I'm a big guy with big hands, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I've been getting pushed around and stepped on by cows for my entire life since I was a kid. So a dog bite to me didn't seem all that too severe. But when he said that, I'm like, whoa, like all these things he was listing, these different ways that he was going to care for me as a doctor, really reinforced my decision that I made the right decision by going to get it checked out, because it wasn't just a wash it and put a Band-Aid on it. It was antibiotics, a tetanus shot, a hand x-ray to make sure nothing went wrong and nothing's broken and there's not a foreign object in your hand that's going to fester and get worse. And then we'll send you on your merry way. So next time something happens in your life, please don't ask, will I be fine? Instead, ask, what would I tell someone else to do? And then when you say that out loud, when you figure out what that is, please give yourself permission and have the courage to take your own advice and to take care of yourself. We only get one life, you guys. We only get one trip around this path that we call life, or one trip down the path we call life. How am I doing? But taking care of ourselves is so paramount, because we don't get another body. We don't get another heart. We don't get another mind. We don't get another soul. This is who we are, and this is what we have to work with. So it's so important to take care of yourselves. As always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for caring for others. And please, as you walk forward today, make sure you're taking care of yourself as well. I appreciate you listening more than I can say. Follow along with me on social media if you'd like to. I am Todd W. Hiller on Instagram and TikTok, and you can go ahead and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for your time, and be well. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.